In the Payette Forest Coalition meeting notes for August, there was mention of reviewing the PFC goals at an upcoming meeting, and I think this has come up at several other meetings, including way back in December, when the PFC met to review their current membership and get help from the collaboration cadre on re-energizing the membership. So we've got a couple of months before another PFC meeting, and I decided to go through and review a little history of the coalition goals to help clarify information or the chronology for those who weren't involved for the past 6 years. So this is intended just as background information, and I hope that it's helpful for the upcoming review at a later meeting. So I'm starting in 2009. There were invitation letters sent out by two conveners, the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Dave Terrell, and the Southwest Idaho Woody Biomass Utilization Partnership, and Morris Huffman represented that organization. And I think the letter was sent to probably 45 or 50 individuals, asked them to get together at a meeting in McCall and discuss the potential for a collaborative effort. And the Forest Service, of course, was also involved in that meeting. The primary question that was asked at the time was, what can we as a group accomplish as a collaborative that exceeds what we can accomplish separately, either as individuals or through our organizations? And there were two goals that evolved or developed from June until August, and they represented, again, the two organizations that convened that first meeting. One was to improve wildlife habitat, and the second was to contribute to local economies through biomass utilization. In essence, an attempt to combine both stewardship and conservation interests with those of wood utilization and support of local economies in areas around the Payette National Forest. So between August and January, the group continued to meet, agreed that the coalition was worth the effort, and developed recommendations for a project area that was known as Mill Creek Council Mountain. And in January of 2010, the first project recommendations were made. The goals in the report that the coalition submitted to the Payette National Forest expanded from the original 2 to 4. The first was a slight modification, a little more detailed on wildlife, improve wildlife habitat for the white-headed woodpecker and other species as appropriate. The second was contribute to economies of the adjacent communities. The third, that came up often during the discussions over the fall, was to reduce wildfire hazard. And the fourth was to encourage biomass utilization to generate revenue in order to support the first 3 goals. During that time period, Congress authorized the Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration Program and invited forests to submit proposals. The Payette National Forest did submit a proposal. The proposal included the coalition's goals. The goals within that proposal were identical to the goal statement that we just reviewed for the Mill Creek Council Mountain project. And the proposal covered roughly 100,000 acres, which was essentially the original Mill Creek Council Mountain project split into 2 phases in order to help the ID team handle the workload. So 2 phases of roughly 50,000 acres each. And the project duration in the proposal was 7 years. The outcome of that proposal was that 10 other projects were accepted in 2010. The Payette proposal was not accepted. And both the Payette National Forest staff and also the coalition received feedback from the National Advisory Panel members. And the feedback was the following. They recommended that the duration be extended from 7 to 10 years. Also that the scope was not, the geographic scope was too small. And as a result, the proposal was revised and expanded from 100,000 acres to 500,000 acres of Forest Service ownership. They also wanted documentation of the coordination between the forest and the coalition. And an important part of that documentation was to include a PFC letter of support for the proposal. So in 2011, in January of 2011, a revised proposal was prepared by a working group that included members of the coalition and the Payette National Forest staff. The goals, the coalition goals, did change somewhat. The wildlife goal became improve wildlife habitat on a landscape scale, a little bit more general rather than specifically referencing the white-headed woodpecker. Contribute to economies of surrounding communities was very similar, as was the reduce wildfire hazard and encourage utilization of biomass as a byproduct of the process. After the proposal was submitted, the coalition moved to a new project area, the Lost Creek Boulder Creek landscape. And in that process, the group revisited goals, in no small part because membership did change as we moved from the Council Ranger District to the New Meadows Ranger District. The 4 goals that were incorporated in the 2011 proposal for CFLRP became 5 goals in these categories: wildlife, wildfire, watershed health, access and recreation, and restoration economics. The wildlife goal was changed, was modified to state that the goal was to improve habitat for both terrestrial and aquatic species as appropriate by need. There was also an important need to add aquatic species because they were somewhat overlooked in the first project in Mill Creek Council Mountain. Wildfire had 3 different components to the goal. I've only included the first major one here: improve forest resiliency to wildfire by restoring potential vegetation groups toward their respective historical range of structure. For watershed health, the goal is to improve water quality and watershed health. A new one, although the topic of access and recreation was discussed at length over the period from June of 2009 to spring of 2012, it was incorporated formally as a goal and was stated as enhance the road and trail network to support access for not only resource management, but outdoor recreation and public safety. And the restoration economics goal was modified to state that the coalition would recommend actions which are both financially responsible as well as contributing to the economic vitality of the communities that are in and around the Payette National Forest. At the same time, a mission statement was adopted in early 2012, and that mission is to build diverse community support for forest restoration. So over roughly a 3-year period from June of 2009 until spring of 2012, several events happened. We had projects going, recommendations developed, NEPA in various stages, and then to sort of add to the complication of the process was recognizing or acknowledging that Congress had authorized a separate program, the CFLRP, that would help finance these large restoration projects. And the Payette wisely chose to compete in that process in order to secure the funds to proceed with some of these projects. Well, one of the questions that's come up is, are the goals consistent with the CFLRP purpose? And I guess before I get into that, I would like to emphasize that the chronology here is that the two CFLRP proposals were done sort of in tandem, and the coalition members were certainly aware of the intent of the CFLRP as they modified and refined goals. So that is just sort of a footnote to the process. So to give a little bit of background on on whether there's an alignment between the coalition's goals and the purpose that Congress intended with CFLRP, I have a few slides here that at the top will have an extract of text from the enabling legislation, and then the relevant goals that the coalition has adopted to that portion that is related to that portion of the legislation. So part of the 2009 Omnibus Public Lands Bill that Congress passed stated that the CFLRP purpose one part of the purpose is to encourage ecological, economic, and social sustainability. So I think that statement of purpose aligns with at least three of the goals of the PFC: wildlife, watershed health, and economics. Another purpose is to facilitate the reduction of wildfire management costs, and I think that fits right into both the wildfire management goal of the PFC as well as the restoration economics goal. Another purpose was to demonstrate, these projects should demonstrate techniques to achieve ecological and watershed health objectives. And so that ties in with both the wildlife and watershed health goals that the PFC adopted. And then a related one, or very similar one, is to demonstrate techniques to affect wildfire activity and management costs. And again, that relates to two goals, the economics one again, as well as wildfire. And then the project should demonstrate the use of byproducts to offset treatment costs while also benefiting local rural economies. And over the years, the coalition has discussed various times the importance of this work to the local communities, and it ties directly to the restoration economics goal. And in fact, I think the specific language that the coalition adopted in the recommendations document was to return to the budget submitted in the Payette's proposal and adopt the percentage of matching funds that would come from byproducts, in other words, from commercial harvest. So one of the goals, at least from what I've reviewed so far, has not really been addressed, and that's access and recreation. And I think if you read within the bill or the legislation that was passed, that there were several criteria for directed to the forests as they prepared their project proposals for review in Washington, D.C. One of the criterion was describe plans to maintain, decommission, and rehabilitate roads and trails. And indeed, the Payette's proposal did include that. And I think also interesting to note is that the metrics nationally that have been adopted for the annual status reports include several metrics dealing with both road and trail maintenance, decommission work, and rehabilitation work. So I think that portion addresses both the access and recreation goal of the coalition, and is some support that it is pertinent and relevant to the work, And those activities within the project dealing with roads and trails, and also with stream crossings and roads directly tied to watershed health activities and the watershed health goal of the Payette Forest Coalition. So I think I will stop there, and that's probably enough for the first video. In a follow-up, I will use this background to move on to a review of where there may be some inconsistencies with the 5 goals and the current interests of the coalition members. And I will have that probably sometime in a week or so.